Welcome to the Wellness in a Chaotic World podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Davis. Before we dive in, I wanted to note that as a health and wellness coach, I can support you in making sustainable lifestyle changes, tuning into your own wisdom, and building habits that align with your values and vision for your well being. I don't prescribe or treat health conditions, as I'm not a doctor or a mental health professional. Instead, I can walk alongside you as you create a healthier life on your terms. From time to time, I share conversations with guests. The views and opinions expressed by those guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect my views or those of anyone associated with wellness in a chaotic world. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and isn't a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always talk to your doctor or qualified mental health provider about any physical or mental health concerns. This is the Wellness in a Chaotic World podcast, a place where we're having conversations about what it really takes to live well in our unhealthy, chaotic world. I'm your host, Cheryl Davis. If you're beating yourself up over a bag of chips you ate in a stressed out frenzy, or you can't figure out how anyone manages to find the time to even think about wellness, you're in the right place. We talk about all of these things and more because, frankly, we don't talk to each other enough about what we're really up against every day. Let's change that right now. My guest today is Robin Jonas. She's a former educator turned stay-at-home mom who went back to school when her girls got older to combine her background in education with her passion for health and wellness. She's now an integrative nutrition health coach who helps people make small shifts that lead to sustainable habits. She encourages her clients to focus on self-care, sleep, mindset, whole foods, plates filled with color, healthy swaps, and movement that brings joy. She is also a fellow podcaster. As the host of the Live Life Balanced podcast, she acts as a guide for her listeners as they embark on a journey of self-discovery. On top of that, she has some exciting things in the works, including a membership for empty nest moms that we'll talk about in today's episode. In addition, we talk about primary foods versus secondary foods, bio-individuality, eating whole foods, what self-care really is, and a lot more that I think you'll find interesting and maybe even eye-opening. Robin and I are really aligned in the way we think about health and wellness, so I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi, Robin. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it, and I'm excited to get having a conversation with you.
Thank you for being here today. So let's talk about your story. You have a new podcast, or a relatively new podcast.
Relatively new.
How did you start that, and how did you get there?
Well, oddly enough, I was in a course, and it wasn't a podcasting course. It was Abundant Ever After with Kathy Heller. And one of the weeks, she said, "Do something out of your comfort zone." And I thought, well, let me try a podcast. And so I was turning 50 that May. And so I decided to gift myself a podcast. And I think there were several reasons why it kind of felt aligned. And number one, I love to educate. That's kind of just all like in my core of being, I think. But also, when I'm working and I'm coaching one-on-one, a lot of it is client driven. And so I felt like I was always missing a lot of the content piece. And so I thought a podcast would be a great way to get out some of the pieces of content, have conversations with other experts, other people that could resonate with my audience, whether it be clients, whether it be my podcasters, whether it be my social media followers, because my whole mission and goal is to spread a ripple effect for better health and wellness, and empowering people to take their health back, and understanding that we do have that power if we know how to work with our bodies.
So you are a coach. You're an integrative nutrition coach. Is that right?
Yes, I am. Yep. I went to IIN. So, and the schooling that I went to, I know there's different titles. There's like, health coach, there's life coach, there's career coach, there's a lot of those things. But integrative health coach means that when you look at a person from, if they come to you wanting something, you just don't specifically look at that one area. You look at a person from a whole being, basically. And so there's two types of foods that we talk about, and one is called secondary food, which is what most people are aware of, which is all the food that you eat on your plate, how you feed yourself, what you feed yourself, um, in the manner in which you feed yourself. Are you on the run? Are you sitting? And then there's the primary foods, which a lot of people are unaware of, which primary foods are all things off your plate that feed you. And when you combine the two, primary and secondary, together, that's what kind of gives you your whole self. And so within primary health, we talk about things like education, career, finances, relationships, where you find joy, where you get your movement. We reframe a lot because I think in our society, we have been conditioned to a lot of things that are actually not true. And so what we've learned is that we don't have the power to heal ourselves, that we have to go to an outside source. And not that that's not necessary sometimes, but we haven't really been taught that our body is talking to us when it's breaking down. Like, there are reasons why things happen. And yes, sometimes medicine's appropriate, sometimes surgery is appropriate, but also there's a whole nother side of that I feel like is ignored and really hasn't come to light yet. But I am very hopeful, and I am seeing it more and more from people who keep running into roadblocks. And I don't know if it's like the age I'm at, but I feel like a lot of people have hit that wall and they're like, why can't I heal? What is wrong with me? What is the problem? Why isn't the quick fix working? Why? And so that's usually, I get people that are kind of at their wits' end. They've tried a lot of things, but they're just not sure what to do next. And as a coach in general, I think if you've never had one, you definitely should try one, because they're a partner. They're not someone dictating what you should and shouldn't do, which is different. But, we come alongside your journey where you're at, and we help you walk forward to make the goals and reach the things that you're looking to reach, which is very different from somebody else. And so that's why I love what I do, because there's never two people that are the same.
Yeah, that's an important point. I mean, do you think that people, they get to a point where they're hitting roadblocks and they're trying all of these different solutions, and it's because we're all different that we're not getting the results that we need unless we try a ton of different
We don't all get
options?
the same results.
Yeah. So what is bio-individuality?
Bio-individuality basically what that actually means is that we are all different. And so what makes us up matters. I think when we're looking at ourselves, when we're talking about bio-individuality, that can mean, your genetics, like how you're born, what your makeup was, your constitution. It can mean what your childhood was like. If you had little traumas, big traumas, all of that plays into your health and wellness along the way somewhere. We talk about, how we handle stress. And I think that's a big one. And, they that term, stress will kill you. Yes. If you do not address your stress in a proper way, it can definitely be a contributing factor to illness. And so what do we mean by that? When we have stress, which, again, if you are a human being that is alive and, is awake every day, you're going to have some type of stress. And so it's not really stress. It's how do you handle the stress? How do you work through the stress? Do you have tools to properly bring you out of that fight or flight response? Because that is the mechanism we go into with stress, to bring you back to the parasympathetic. That has to do with your cortisol levels. It has to do with, how you maintain homeostasis. So all of that matters. And so those are some of the different things that, as a integrative health coach, we can work on together. But that's a lot of reframing, because unfortunately in our society, we've been conditioned to do certain things and have certain reactions. And so a lot of it is just reframing how we look at things. And one of the questions that I absolutely love for myself and everybody else is, when you're having that thought, to question, is that actual truth? Or is that a feeling that I'm having due to it being a trigger? And it doesn't matter what it is. And I think for me, when I became a mom, that was very much thrown in my face as like, oh, okay, so they said this, I responded like this, but why did I respond like that? Because that's probably how I was responded to, or that's how I didn't learn a tool to address that differently. So there was a lot personally that I, had to revamp and redo. again, not that I grew up in a terrible childhood or anything like that, but our parents, everybody does the best they can until they know better. So
Yeah. Yeah. A similar experience when I had my son, just I realized I did not have the tools that I needed, but definitely dove
yeah.
into working on that. So you must work a lot on mindset.
Yes, we do. And that's exactly one of the reasons, like when I was talking about why I started the podcast, because again, when you're working with individuals, you are working a lot on reframing and refocusing and the mindset and being mindful. And so you work a lot on that because before you can do any real change, those are the first steps that have to happen. You've got to create a self-care routine. You've got to learn how to care for yourself first, and then all the other stuff kind of comes. So, and what I mean by that is like a lot of people, because again, based on conditioning of our society, come because they want to lose weight. Well, before you can address that, you've got to back up and address what's come before. And then as your body kind of starts to calm and come into where it needs to be, eating healthier, it becomes easier. You know, losing weight, if that's what you desire, that becomes easier. Um, Not everybody wants to lose weight that comes to me. A lot of people do come because they're just stuck. They feel sick. They don't feel good. They're just tired all the time. So both of those sides kind of get worked on. But mindset, I think, is huge in anything that you do in life. And that's something that, again, having kids, I think kids are was a huge awakening for me. Is just like, I want my kids to have different tools that I did not have, so that they learn to manage themselves differently as they get older.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some of your favorite self-care? I mean, there's tons of options, but a lot of people don't think of it probably the same way that you and I do. It's, it could be bubble baths or what have you, but sometimes it is, but what is it really?
So that's a great question. Self-care to me means giving yourself the time it needs, your body, yourself, to be in the best version of you. And so for me, having quiet time in the morning, um, whether I journal, whether I meditate, whether I'm doing my affirmations for the day, whether I'm doing my devotionals, um, I take that 10 minutes to set myself up to have a better day, because I know when I connect, for me, when I connect with God, when I do my journaling, I just start my day in a much calmer fashion than that rush fashion that I used to. Um, it also means it doesn't have to be going to the spa for an hour, right? It doesn't have to, those are great, but those aren't things that you can implement on a daily basis. And so that's a reframe. It's like, what can you do throughout your day, not just in the morning, not just, so I do a lot of grounding. Like if I'm driving, I just do deep breathing. What the music I listen to or the podcast I listen to, sometimes that's my self-care. Walking in nature. I try to do something in little bits throughout the day so that I keep my self-care practice in line. Does it always happen? No. My mom was in the hospital for 25 days and that kind of had to fall to the wayside. However, in the first 7 days, I was like, this is not working for me. Like, I know I'm off because I'm not doing the things that I normally do. And so I'm not going to be good for anybody unless I care for myself. And so the next, rest of the time I was like, doesn't matter. I'm getting that 10 minutes in the morning. Everything else has to wait. And so I've learned for myself what works for me. And again, it is different for everybody. But what I tell people to do is try to start with a morning routine and an end routine, and then something very small in the middle. And those routines don't have to be 45 minutes long. It might be that you wake up and you don't check your phone for the first 30 minutes you're awake. It means that you get natural sunlight in your eyes, none of which costs money and doesn't take more than 2 seconds to look outside, for a couple of minutes, and then not touch your phone. I think our phones have become like a third appendage for us. And it's really doing us a disservice, because if you wake up and the first thing you're doing is flooding your mind with social media, other people's business, work, problems, things that trigger your body, you're not allowing yourself to have that wake up time that your body needs. And if you think about, like, 15 years ago, our routine looked like we woke up, we hit the alarm clock a couple times, maybe we got a shower, we got breakfast, coffee. Even if we didn't, we weren't talking to anybody. We didn't have, the only thoughts we had going on were our own thoughts, and then whoever was in your home. It wasn't like you had 22 people DMing you or notifying, and then you're seeing, it's just a whole different mind trigger. So again, self-care in the morning doesn't have to be something crazy. I also teach habit stacking, because again, when you're creating new habits, people think, I don't have time. Time's a big factor. And I actually love when people tell me they don't have time because we find it. I'm like, we can always find the time. Let's just check your phone time. Let's check your amount of time that you're checking emails. So we always work in how we can find that time. But habit stacking basically means, for example, if you want to start an oil pulling routine, you brush your teeth, you floss, maybe you're new to tongue scraping or oil pulling. You put that coconut oil in your mouth, you keep it in the bathroom. So you have a bathroom one. If you use it in the kitchen, you keep a separate one, but it's there. You're already brushing your teeth. You put a little in and you jump in the shower. So while you're in the shower, you're actually doing all the swishing and the oil pulling. And so it's not any extra time except for to stick a scoop in and to get in the shower. So again, I like to point out to people and to guide them to see that adding in new habits doesn't have to be a big deal. It's just finding the space in which it works for them, which looks different than, what works for me might not work for you, because you might have a hectic morning where you've got your kids. And so maybe you do it at nighttime. So again, I think it's just little things, giving permission to people to try on things and see if they work. That's another thing, because sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But if you don't try it, you're never going to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And the phones, man, it's like all of the alerts are setting off our nervous systems all the time, aren't they?
Absolutely. One of the things that I talk to people about is airplane mode. And, like myself, I cannot do airplane mode because we don't have a telephone in our home. And so if my mom needs me, if somebody, so what I do is I just remove it out of my space. So it sits in the dining room. And if I hear it, then I can get up and get it. But just not allowing it to be the first thing I check in the morning really helps, for me at least. It helps not to have those racing thoughts. On top of the EFTs, that's a whole nother conversation we could have another time, but the EFTs also. So I like science. I think that, people sometimes need to hear the backstory to things. But if you look at your phone in the morning and you're not getting direct sunlight, you're also messing up your sleep for night, because your cortisol levels are not getting, they're probably high due to stress and all the other stuff you have going on. But when you don't get direct sunlight, you're also not helping to create melatonin for night. And when you can see how many people have issues sleeping that are on melatonin, that are taking sleeping, pills or whatever, Tylenol PM and all the other stuff. So again, it's more than just a fun habit. There are like real scientific health stuff that comes along with staring at your phone all day.
Yeah, definitely. So you talk about 1% shifts.
So I created a method to create ease for people, because whenever you are starting something new, it can be overwhelming. It is an overwhelming thought to maybe, change out your processed sugar. It's an overwhelming thought to how am I going to, find fun movement a couple of times a week. And people have a lot of times what I call the all or nothing mentality, which is I'm either all in, and when I dip, I'm all out. And you are going to face dips. I mean, that's just part of life. And so taking the mentality of a 1% shift. So if your goal, let's say, is to replace processed sugar in your home, you're not going to go and just freak out and dump all the sugar and try to figure out what you're going to do in between. You're going to observe what you have. You're going to make a goal that maybe you want to replace it, over time. And then we do one small thing. So the first small thing I tell people is, what is it that you eat the most of? If you eat, sugar wise, if you are somebody, I'm just making this up, but if you're a cereal eating family, and you eat cereal every single morning, and you look at your cereal and your cereal has 35 grams of sugar based on whatever you guys have been normally purchasing, then that would be the first place in which I would see it would be best to make that first shift. And so maybe we just find a new cereal. So we're not looking at all the other snacks. We're not looking at all the other things, even though eventually those will all evolve. We're just taking one small step at a time. And that is honestly the best way to create a lifestyle. And I tell people I'm not the person to come to for a quick fix, because that's just not why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm trying to help people create a sustainable lifestyle. And so the 1%, the 1% shift method allows people to give themselves grace as they transform their pantry or their, way they cook. Or, if it's movement, people are like, well, I can't go to the gym. I can't afford a gym. That's great. You don't have to go to the gym. Like, what did you do as a kid that was fun? I think we forget that piece of, having fun and enjoying what we're doing. And nobody's saying you have to go 5 times a week. Let's start with 2 10 minutes. If you could do 2 10 minutes a week and find success, and you actually start to enjoy whatever it is you're doing, by nature, you will want to add another day on, or you might want to add another 10 minutes on. So again, it's listening and working with yourself from where you're starting. If somebody has been going to the gym 5 days a week for 20 years, that's not going to be a big deal to them, right? They're going to need to just look at what type of exercise they're doing, or how does that work with their midlife body, or, so there's tons of different conversations, but the 1% is just getting that mentality of it's just small, tiny, incremental steps. And you are going to have dips. There are going to be some times when those things don't work out, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think tiny steps would allow us to build a new reality for ourselves. Yeah. So let me switch gears on you for just a second and ask you about whole foods. What are they and what are the benefits of eating them?
So whole foods is, when people think about what whole foods are, I always like to visit the produce section. And when you pick up a bag of carrots, it should just say carrots. When you pick up a thing of lettuce, it should just really say lettuce. And so when you're eating whole foods and foods in its whole form, you're getting all the vitamins, you're getting the minerals, you're getting the fiber, you're getting whatever comes densely packed because it was created in nature. Where things start to shift and go awry is where certain things are sprayed with a lot of herbicides, pesticides, things that take the natural food form and make it contaminated. And so there's something called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And I encourage everybody to look it up, take a little screenshot, keep it on your phone. And basically what that does is it tells you which foods are sprayed most heavily. So those are the dirty ones. And then which ones are sprayed the least, which are your clean ones. So if you're a family who can only afford certain things organic, I would always say make sure your Dirty Dozen is always bought as an organic produce. The Clean 15, so for example, avocados, if it's a lot more expensive to buy, organic avocados and you're on a budget, then that would be something that you don't have to buy organic. So again, Dirty Dozen and Clean 15, you can look it up every year. They have a new little list. It's mostly the same, but sometimes depending on however the crops, I guess, are produced or however they figure it out. So when you take the whole food and you go to make a recipe, for example, in your kitchen, you're using all whole foods and spices and things like that. And so that makes a recipe, right? So you're getting a bunch of different mixed whole foods, but then it's like when you go to a section where there's pre-made food, we think because of our experience in cooking in our kitchen that your pre-packaged food is just going to be whole foods mixed together to make a recipe in a way that we can buy it. Packaged foods have preservatives, they have hydrogenated oils, cheaper oils, they'll have food dyes. Those are big inflammatory things that for me are hard nose. high fructose corn syrup, things that are cheaply made to make the shelf life of the product um, last longer. So there are many ingredients, again, which are red flags for me. And I did create a new food staples guide, and you guys are more than welcome. We can put it in the show notes. You guys are more than welcome to have that because it's a great resource for swapping things. It's a great resource for learning how to read ingredients. And one of the questions I get a lot is this food healthy? Oh, it's really low in calories. Oh, it's got 2 carbs. Oh, it's sugar free. And so my question always and will always be, what are the ingredients? Because you can have what you feel like is a clean label as far as calories and content in that respect. But if the ingredients are not clean, it really doesn't matter to me what any of that says, because the food is not whole. It's going to hurt. It will affect you in some way down the road. And so we talk a lot in that guide about what are some red flags for, and I even have a podcast episode on that. So if that's something that you're into, make sure you check that out too. It kind of goes with the guide, but it's just an education. So we know when we're looking at a product, is this something that's healthy? You don't have to think about it. And hydrogenated oils, it's not something we keep in our pantry. It's hydrogenated oils. So to me, that is chemically made, and I don't think that that's good to put into your body because it inflames your body. So then you have the repercussions of low chronic inflammation over time. So again, it all goes back to understanding what you're actually putting in your mouth.
Yeah. When I was trying to lose weight, because that's where I came to it first, it was frustrating because I felt like I was doing the right things. Because like I'm eating healthy, aren't I? But then at some point I realized I really wasn't. It had to go toward whole
So just
foods and yeah.
right. But I'm curious, like, because, way, way long ago, probably when I first got married, I remember before I got married, I was going to eat healthy, and so I started doing like, I can't remember what they were called, but like healthy choice meals, whatever. I was single at the time, I was a teacher. And so I was like, well, if I could just get all healthy things that were quick, then it would be, but obviously, now in hindsight, I've learned. So I'm just curious, like what you thought was healthy and then how you learned otherwise, I guess.
Yeah. So things like the prepackaged, like protein bars that are actually packed with a bunch of sugar. And for me, learning it was just kind of coming into seeing a lot of stuff online from Dr. Mark Hyman, and just becoming aware of it.
Yeah. And you know what? That's such a good point. Number one, there's a lot of what I call greenwashing that happens within our industry of food, which is kind of sad. But the greenwashing in respect to, again, you're looking at that protein bar, you need to get your protein up, right? that that's something that you've heard. But when you look at the label, right, it's like, ooh, it's got 20 grams of protein. Like, that's amazing. Like, that's like how much I would get with eating like a small meal, and it's like, but again, without reading the ingredients and understanding what those ingredients actually are, it ends up that that's not always the healthiest choice. But again, we get duped by the marketing. So that's where I get frustrated with our FDA. There's not really like transparency with marketing. There's a lot of loopholes. If you see the word natural flavors, that's one that just makes my insides fire up, because natural flavors, just like fragrance, is a loophole for hiding a bunch of stuff. Natural flavors means that it could have, one speck of, I don't know, let's say lemon, right? Or a lemon oil or something. And the rest is a lemon flavoring. It's like that is made in a laboratory and it's intensified. It intensifies the lemon smell or the lemon taste, because then that drives our taste buds to want to have more. So again, if it's strawberry flavored or just sometimes they don't even say it, they just say natural flavors. Like, what's natural flavors? I've never seen that in the grocery store. Can you, that's what I always ask people. Can you go to the grocery store and go to an aisle and find some of these words? And if you can't, that should be a red flag to you. So I do think awareness, that word that you used, that's like the absolute key to anything when you're trying to change. As soon as you're aware of something, then you can make a wise, a more educated choice. If you're unaware, then it's not our fault because we're just walking through life depending on people putting food out for us, depending on our farmers doing the right things, depending on our government to do the right things. And that's where I like to flip the script because we really can't depend on anybody but ourselves.
Yeah, unfortunately. So if people wanted to find more about you, and your podcast and your coaching services, where should they
Sure.
go?
My podcast is called Live Life Balanced with Robin. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google. I can't remember where else, but a couple other places. So wherever you listen, look it up and see if you can find it, but definitely on Apple and Spotify. My website is livelifebalancedwithrobin.com. My social media handles are Live Life Balanced with Robin. I currently coach one-to-one. I also am in creation of a course that's going to be an 8-week course that's going to go over more of the basics. And then you will get one individualized session to set goals and then one brief exit kind of one-on-one so that, we are working also together. And then I also am creating a membership for empty nest moms because I feel like when our kids go off to college, moms are finally having a minute to come up for air is what for survival, and they have forgotten how to take care of themselves. And so it's going to be based around a lot of wellness for what do you do when your kids leave? How do you find yourself again, find your passions, work on your health and wellness because now you do have the time and the space. So that is also launching in January.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. Yeah, I haven't hit that point yet. My son is still young, so
Yeah,
but
enjoy it.
I definitely
It's
understand.
Yeah, it's just a part of life.
Yeah.
And with having like a baby, there's like mommy and me groups, and there's, things where you can have like tribes made. And then in school, you get the parents of school and the activities and all the stuff. And then all of a sudden, like your children go to college, which is amazing and awesome because you've done a great job getting them, to the point where they're ready to go. And then all of those friendships and those tribes kind of don't exist because you're not going to football games every Saturday, you're not doing all of the things. And then a lot of moms, even if they've worked along the way, there's just a void that happens. And so in the market research that I did, they're struggling, and I think, why? We don't need to do that. Like, we're better than that. We can come together as a community and work through those things and have fun, because that's really what empty nesting should be about.
Awesome. Thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. I really love the fact that we aligned together, and I looked forward to having you on my show as well.
Yeah, I look forward to that too.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. So Robin and I talked about a lot of different topics, but there are a few things that I wanted to highlight. The first is that making small shifts is really one of the best ways to make lifestyle changes. There are certainly times when things need to be dramatic, like when you discover that you have a food allergy. But for making lifestyle changes where reaping the benefits take a little bit more time and patience, there, the reward isn't quite so immediate. Um, it can really help to use the small shifts method because it really takes away the overwhelm. The second thing that I wanted to note is that what Robin says about self care being more of a daily practice is really important. A lot of advertising would have us think that self care is all about going to the spa for the day or taking bubble baths every day or eating chocolate. Maybe those things are a part of your self care, but they're very hard to maintain on a daily basis. it's really a key thing to understand that it's daily habits that allow us to be the best version of ourselves. And finally, I think it's really important to note that, it's not just about the food that we put on our plates. That is certainly very important. But if there are other things in our lives that are out of balance, misaligned, just out of harmony, things like your finances, things like your relationships with the people that you love, the people that you work with, etc. Um, these things are going to affect your overall happiness and wellness. I am certainly guilty of occasionally only focusing in on one or two aspects of my life. And so those things will be going great. And then I forget about those other parts of my life that need a little bit of attention. Sometimes we need to take 1,000-foot view from above to see where we need to place our focus again. The new year is still fresh, so maybe now is a good time to do it, but I don't think there's ever really a bad time to take a look at all of the different parts of our lives. Everything from creativity to career and health and finances, social life, relationships, our home environment, and even what we're learning on a daily basis. It's all good to look at and see if anything is really out of balance. So I'm definitely doing that right around now, and I'll try to do that again halfway through the year. I'm asking questions like, where do I feel stuck? Um, where do I feel too comfortable? Where are there things that are missing? Um, are there things that I'm tolerating and shouldn't be? Another question I think is good to ask is, how do I want to feel in each of these areas of my life? Sometimes, if you can get the body to feel what it would be like in those situations in the future, it can be easier to understand what might need to change now. So, if the timing feels right for you too, I would invite you to ask yourself some questions of your own and see where there might be a few shifts you can make. Thank you for listening today. You can find out more about this episode and other episodes on the website at wellnessinachaoticworld.com, or you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, where we can chat more about living in our stressed out, chaotic world. And as always, I hope you have a healthy, happy week. If today's episode resonated with you, our private Facebook group is a great place to dive deeper, ask questions, and share wins with people who understand. It's free, it's private, and you can join by clicking the link in the episode description. I hope to see you there.